delinquent volume is going to dry up. And we keep seeing delinquent numbers, and I've been putting them in all my reports, and you certainly see them on your monthly reports and your aggregates. And wondered why that was happening. And I started looking into this. And you recall that in January, we reviewed the year-to-date, year-to-year comparisons for 2020 and 2021. And last year's revenue generation showed a $24.2 billion increase over the prior year. And that was an 11.5% increase. Why was that happening? What was driving this up? If you think back, it's gone up every year. Now we passed the first quarter of this year, and I wanted to see how was it playing out compared to the year before. And in fact, let me move this right. Yeah, I get the red poster up. All right. Revenue track. Yeah. First quarter, you'll see went from 55 million to 62. Last year we were up 11.5%. In this first quarter, compared to the first quarter of 21, it's up 11.7%. A real consistent increase. Now, I always caution everybody, timing means a lot. The employers submitting, when do their funds come in? And the bigger factor is coming in from other collectors, for those who work in other counties, and the money has to be accounted for, collected by from the employers in those counties and sent back to us. So there's always a timing issue, and that doesn't mean guarantee as to what's going to happen over the course of the entire year, but we're in good shape. Right now, everything is telling us we're in really good shape.
Can you tell if any of it's from Philadelphia?
We will be able to know a whole lot more of that studying the final returns. Okay. And those, of course, were just filed mid-April, and everything came in then. We're going to be doing a lot of data mining there to see what we can see compared to the Philadelphia, compared to the employer submissions throughout the course of the year. One thing I'm really hoping we can get through, and I raised it with one of the big lobbying firms in Harrisburg, is can we get access to Philadelphia's data? Because that will tell us so much about who is and who is no longer paying tax in Philadelphia and where they live. So far, we don't have access to that. None of the tax officers under Act 32, because Philadelphia isn't under Act 32. And kind of carved out from the very beginning, because they have their own tax office and their own Sterling Act that predated anything the other counties and the rest of the state could do. Great question, but we're working really hard to get that kind of info. So we can get
a 2-year delay on the data?
There is a 2-year delay, at least a 2-year delay, on the release of data from the Department of Revenue.
So 21 was just filed, and 20 was filed last year, so.
Right.
You're working on 19 numbers, aren't you?
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about final returns, so I can look at all the W-2s. What are the employers saying you did?
Okay.
And where you worked and what was withheld? Did it go to Philly? And if so, why? If not, did you pay where you live? Okay. Same way we look at all non-res. If your non-res rate is different from the local rate, or if you look at a community, like a lot of Delaware County, for instance, doesn't have EIT. And if somebody is working down there and just being withheld, it all comes back. If the non-res community, if there's a community that has a non-res rate that could be higher than 1%, and the resident rate is 1%, then there's a discrepancy. Part of it goes to the home, the 1%, and the rest of it stays in the community for the workplaces. Last time we talked about delinquent recoveries, and I was really happy to report to you that at that time, by automating a lot of the process, and we really dove into that during the entire pandemic time when revenue wasn't releasing any data, they held off for a year. And offered a lot of online payment options, delinquents were going up. As we expected them to, we recovered a lot of delinquent revenue during that time. We've done a lot of analysis as to why we're seeing the level of increase in delinquents against the prediction that it was all going to be going down because of the withholding systems and the payroll systems and everything like that. And to do that, we pulled the audits and aggregate collection reports for comparable sized counties and comparable revenue generated counties across Pennsylvania. And we looked at their audits to see what their delinquent trends are compared to ours. So counties that we didn't collect for to counties that we did. In talking to DCD through that process, we learned that what we were seeing on these increases was not the standard, was not what was happening in the rest of the state. So there was something different going on. And as it turned out, we were up higher and our highs were increasing much more dramatically and much more consistently than the rest of the state. In fact, a lot of counties during the pandemic pulled back. Their revenues actually went down during that time. And we didn't see that in any of ours.
That's what they were all predicting.
Yes, they predicted that, and it actually did happen in a lot of places. It did not in ours, and we were trying to figure out, okay, why? Some are situated very close to each other and had the same kind of employers, or the same employers. These are your delinquents in 2020 for the pandemic, 7.1 million. 21, almost doubled after that ended. Again, we're trying to figure out why, were these things happening, what can we find from the data? It turns out the increases in revenues is closely aligned with the delinquent efforts that we're putting in. And it looks like there isn't a reason for it to slow down or to stop. Right now, we have 6 attorneys at Keystone who are entirely focused on delinquent recovery. We have a whole team of IT focused on delinquent recovery. That's a huge arm, a huge tool that you have at your disposal to keep the revenue generating. One attorney, for example, pursues complex out-of-state crediting. A lot of people working out of state, and they take advantage. Oftentimes, we have very high income, very wealthy income earners attempting to overstate allowable credits. There's a limit to what you can take in crediting, and they overstate them. What we found, and I found this by looking at all these audit reports, we were catching them, and others were not even discovering that they weren't looking, so they certainly weren't pursuing them. It's a huge difference, and those kinds of things going on has a double effect. One, you don't get the delinquent recovery they should be getting, and the penalty and the interest, because as we just heard, they're two years behind, or 2.5 years behind by the time we get the data from revenue. The other thing is people who get caught in those situations generally don't do it again. So you're piling that on to your currents. So it's a double improvement for you. You cover the old delinquent years, and there's usually multiple by the time we get them, because they've been trying this for a while, and then they get current in the year that we're in then. That's what seems to be the primary driver. Another Keystone attorney on our team focuses his entire practice on non-compliant employers withholding, and has found windfalls in watching that process and making sure their entire payroll is being submitted and being submitted timely. When it's off, this is a quarter-by-quarter testing that we run. We get them caught up and recover that, and if it's a costly thing, if we have to pursue them through legal means or anything like that, by the Act 192, that's forwarded by the employer, not by you, not by anybody else. So that's really having a doubling effect for you in the current year, along with that, along with the recovery of those delinquent numbers. Through this process, as I was trying to answer this question for those that asked at the beginning, I kept thinking about how long now have we paid our federal taxes that have been withheld? a long, long time for the IRS. Even though Act 32 is new, a newer system to model that one, they have a huge delinquent problem every year. The delinquent issue, I'm determined to believe, is not going away. And if we're not pursuing it, or we're not chasing them down, you're gonna just lose that revenue. And that's why it's a critical piece, and that's what I wanted to share with you, and share with you some of the things we're doing to make sure we're getting that money to you, and keeping these numbers going up every year. So, a predictor of the original Act 32 that would solve the delinquent problem isn't happening, but at the same time, it's still increasing your revenue. So we'll just keep doing it. And again, that's a zero commission process. The delinquent always pays the costs of all that recovery. That's not in the current commission at all, so it's all free tax, penalty, and interest all going back to you. So that's what I was to share. The audits, your yellow book audits, have, they've completed them. I understand from Boyer and Ritter that they are in final draft right now, so you should be receiving the audits of all these numbers and the testing on all that fairly shortly. That should be coming out, I'm guessing, in a week or two. You'll have that in hand.